2 days ago I decided I was going to take Hawaiian Baby Woodrose seeds again. I have taken them over 10 times now and feel very comfortable with them and seem to know what to expect from each trip, only this one was very different. That night I ground up 7 seeds, the amount I normally take for a fairly mild trip. I started by scraping off the fuzzy exterior of the seeds with a sharp pocket knife. It has been rumored that this coating increases nausea associated with HB Woodrose seeds. I then prepared the 7 seeds for grinding by crushing them with a pair of needle nose pliers. I do this because the hard shell is difficult to crush with a pestle and mortar without first using another means of cracking them open. After crushing each seed individually, I loaded them up into the pestle and mortar and ground them up into a fine powder. I put this powder in a Ziploc bag and then into a metal canister to prevent exposure to any light that may break up the LSA. The mixture was now ready for consumption the next day. Upon coming home from work, around 3:15 p.m. the day after I ground up the seeds, I decided to consume the HB Woodrose seeds. I took out the powder and poured it into a standard shot glass and filled it with water and a small amount of Mio water flavoring to avoid the dirty taste of the seeds. I knocked back the solution and repeated the process twice more in order to consume the remaining mixture at the bottom of the shot glass. After consuming the seeds, my stomach started to churn a bit as it normally does upon first taking them. 10 or 15 minutes after taking them, one of my roommates came out to say he was considering breaking up with his girlfriend and was very torn up about it. I would normally feel pretty terrible and try to console him and help him figure things out, but the seeds were already having a minor impact on me that made me feel very sleepy and apathetic. I talked to him for about 15 minutes or so and then decided to take a short nap until the seeds kicked in more. I laid down on the couch and napped until 4:15, an hour after taking the seeds. At about the same time I woke up, the biddies all came over. Will, Jake, and Jacob came inside to hang out. Jake had tried a cold water extraction method of seed preparation and they all sat down and smoked a bowl almost immediately. I did not participate, knowing very well that cannabis and Hawaiian Baby Woodrose seeds together produce an overwhelming feeling that I simply couldn't comprehend anything. I have smoked marijuana every single time that I have taken the seeds, always during the coming down stage. I was feeling pretty gross, like I had just smoked several cigarettes in a short amount of time and felt pressure on my chest. I also noticed I was starting to trip. It hit me in waves. I felt overwhelmingly happy in my body, numb, for several minutes at a time, followed by brief periods of normalcy. I started to feel extremely nauseous, as I always do when taking HB Woodrose. It was probably around 4:30 p.m. I walked into the bathroom, sat down and wrapped my arms around the toilet bowl, and stuck my finger down my throat. I dry heaved for probably 5 or 10 minutes without a drop of anything coming up. The nausea subsided, and I felt much better. I returned to the couch and laid back down. Every other time I have taken Hawaiian Baby Woodrose, I have puked up the seed matter. I was in for the trip of my life. Milou and Kayla showed up around 5:30, after getting off of work. They, too, had ground up seeds the night before. They both took theirs with pudding and sat down to begin their trips. It was about this time that I lost contact with everyone. I was starting to peak and wanted nothing to do with anyone else. I was laying down and felt more comfortable than I have ever felt in my entire life. Every time rolled around, I felt happy and exhilarating. I did not enjoy sitting up or walking around, though, as it made my stomach churn and actually produced a sort of sharp pain in my abdomen. Otherwise, I was very happy with the way my trip was going so far. At about 6:15 p.m., my crazy roommate Meg told us her dad was coming to pick her up and take her home for the summer. She said he wouldn't mind the smell of weed in the air and probably wouldn't recognize it. I hadn't noticed the smell in the air, but we all went out on the balcony to escape from him as if to not make fools of ourselves while he was here. He showed up at about 6:30 and moved her stuff out while I smoked 2 cigarettes outside. For some reason, I love to smoke menthol cigarettes after taking the seeds. When I inhale, I can't really feel the smoke and can take much larger drags than normal. Because of this, I become even more overwhelmed with euphoria. Meg and her dad left and we all went back inside. It reeked of weed. Oops. I could tell I was starting to come down around 7:30 p.m. I still felt a little uneasy when walking around, but I was not experiencing the intense euphoria associated with peaking on the seeds. Jake asked if we were going to smoke weed anytime in the near future. I told him I needed a few more minutes to come down a little more before smoking. They obliged and waited for me. At 8:15 p.m., I packed a rather large bowl in my bubbler. The cannabiddies, Will, Jake, Jacob, Kayla, and myself, all smoked. I was surprised Kayla wanted to since she was still peaking, after having taken the seeds 2 hours after myself. Malu wasn't feeling anything. About 5 minutes after having finished smoking, I felt as though I couldn't do anything but sit still, or rather, lay still on the love seat in the living room. After talking to Jacob about cleaning glass pieces immediately after smoking so it doesn't sit out for a long period of time, I decided to try and get up to clean my bubbler. As I was getting up, I noticed Kayla was going into my bathroom. I asked if she could wait because I felt as though I had to puke. I put the bubbler down and raced into the bathroom, though I wasn't quite sure the sensation I was feeling was nausea. I was in sensory overload. Everything was happening, though almost nothing was happening. I curled up in the toilet bowl, and felt completely drained. Everything went black. I woke up in a fetal position in front of the sink in the bathroom. I had no idea what had happened or what was currently going on. The perspective of the bathroom from a sideways angle was very profound. It made me feel as though I were in a brand new place. The first thing I could think to do was unlock the bathroom door so someone could get in if I passed out again. I just wanted to lay back down, but I had no idea how long I had been in the bathroom and decided to leave to avoid looking foolish. I got up and went to my room across the hall to lay down. I noticed my ears were ringing so loud that I felt as though someone were screaming in my head. I wanted it to go away more than anything in the world. I lay there wondering how long I was in the bathroom and whether or not I hit my head, which may have caused the ringing in my ears. I lay completely still without any movement at all. I felt as though my mind were more active than it had ever been before. I could not stop thinking. I wasn't thinking about anything in particular, but I couldn't slow down my racing thoughts. I was panicked. Kayla came in my room shortly thereafter and asked what was up. I said I had passed out in the bathroom and needed to cool down. I was sweating quite a bit. I told her I was in sensory overload and couldn't even handle her being in the room and asked her to leave. I laid there for what felt like an hour and then rejoined the biddies in the living room. As soon as I stood up I felt as though I would pass out again. I rushed to the love seat and plopped down in it. I was still really worried about my physical health and announced to everyone that I had passed out in the bathroom. I think it freaked everyone out. I asked how long I had been in the bathroom to try and calm my nerves. Surprisingly, they told me I was only in there for about 5 minutes. I felt much better, knowing that I hadn't been passed out cold in the bathroom for 30 minutes. I also asked if they heard any loud noises, like if I had hit my head, which I thought may have caused the ringing in my ears. The noise, oddly enough, reminded me of the startup noise of an old box computer monitor, only amplified several hundred times. They told me they hadn't heard anything out of the ordinary, which comforted me a lot. I shut my eyes and lay motionless on the love seat, feeling as though any movement might kill me. Everyone else probably thought I was asleep, but, on the contrary, I was feeling very much alive. As I was lying there, Jacob and Jake kept trying to talk to me. I told them I was fine, but that I could not handle conversation and went back to laying there silently. The three of them decided to leave shortly after I rejoined them. I lay there, essentially lifeless, for a long time. As Kayla and I lay on our respective couches across from one another, I noticed Grand Theft Auto 4 was still on, though no one was playing. No one said a word. I was entranced by GTA for a period of time. I turned around so I could face the TV and watch the nothingness unfold. The main character was standing still in one place, occasionally cutting away to stare at someone across the street or crouch in place. There were AI walking around having their own conversations, which I paid a lot of attention to. I also heard a constant brake squeal from the cars stopping at the traffic light nearby in the game. The minor happenings of the game were so neat to me, and I couldn't stop paying attention to it. As I lay there watching nothing of importance happen in the game, I also heard a girl humming for minutes at a time. The sound seemed to be coming from the dining room table behind the love seat I was on, which was where Malu was sitting. I swore it was her until I asked her after the fact. She told me she was not humming at all. The melody I heard was sweet and flowing and I could not help but be amused by it. It was profound. It was another thing I could not help but focus all of my attention on. The humming was not a particular song or melodic line I had ever heard before, but it was still amazing, especially looking back on it and trying to figure out if I was hearing things that weren't actually real. Malu left, still sober, and Kayla and I lay lifeless on the two couches without speaking or moving. The time was probably 9:30 p.m. I started to feel as though I were one with the couch. It may sound absurd, but I quite literally believed that I was becoming the couch, that I were sinking into it and would, at some point, be sat on day in and day out like my soul weren't even there. I wondered to myself if this is how furniture were created, which actually made me laugh aloud. I moved my arms and legs every minute or so to make sure I wasn't trapped inside. As I lay there, still hearing things very vividly, I started to have some very weird sensations within my body. It began by being able to feel my blood coursing through my veins. I could feel it pushing through, to all of the different parts of my body. I was feeling my innards in a way I had never before. I could feel my lungs physically working to keep me breathing. Inflating and deflating within my chest cavity. I could feel them working quite quickly and heavily. I believe I started to hyperventilate a little and started to sweat lightly. I think I was feeling around inside of myself for a punctured lung or something that might be life-threatening. I was still freaked out about passing out earlier. I explored my insides and all of my body's functions that I normally take for granted and ignore. I started to believe that I was dying and was awaiting a very slow and gruesome death. Around 10:15, I told Kayla I was going to go lay down in my room and she did the same. I got up from the love seat for the very first time since I had returned after passing out. I went to the bathroom first to try and get ready for bed, but as soon as I stood up, I started to feel the same fuzzy feeling deep inside of me that I had felt moments before passing out. I grabbed my glasses, ripped out my contacts, and rushed to my room. I started to close the door, but left it cracked so that my roommates could check on me if they got worried. I jumped into bed and passed out a second time. I don't really remember waking up, but I do remember lying in bed for an extraordinary amount of time, probably until around 1 or 2 in the morning, listening to the sounds seeping through my cracked window. I could hear cars zipping by on what is normally, by nightfall, a silent highway about a quarter of a mile away. I remember I could feel the cool wind pouring through my window screen and remember how good it felt to be wrapped up in a giant comforter. I lay there, once again, without moving. My thoughts were running wild as I kept cycling through my body functions and slowly came to terms with death. I remember mentally begging for it to come soon so I didn't have to suffer through this nightmare. I tried to close my eyes and go to sleep. I was exhausted from such a long workday and passing out, but my mind would not shut down. I could not sleep under any sort of circumstance. I rolled over to try and get more comfortable and I think I passed out a third time. Things got fuzzy after that and I woke up the next morning feeling very confused. Peace.